Okay, our agenda for today, like I said, I just want to talk about accounting and finance, and I'm going to focus on some key topics. As I was thinking through this presentation, and I totally revamped it from what I've done in the past. Don't worry, we're not going to get any debits and credits. We're not going to be talking about journal entries or any detailed numbers. Basically high-level topics, and I'm going to start with the discussion on awareness and support, then talk about management communications, assessing liquidity, and then key items impacting the financial statement. So I will identify specific accounts like assets and revenues, payables, expenses, and loans. And then once again, we'll have a small group discussion at the end. So we can go to the next slide. And we're going to continue on with the discussion using Brenda. And so as I go through these, I want you to be thinking about these questions because it'll also be as part of your discussion questions later in a different format. But this first scenario has Brenda, a business owner, wants to be more proactive about her company's financial position during and after the pandemic or a crisis or whatever comes up. How can she get started? Switch to the next slide. I think what needs to happen is Brenda needs to be, to jumpstart or continue her crisis management process, you need to have certain tools available to you to assist you in understanding your company better. So what she'll need to do is get support. And so that's why I use the word awareness and support, because she's not in it alone. And we already talked about in the morning session to get people involved, to ask questions, to get information, and then also to give information to other people. So this is why on this diagram I show Brenda needs to touch base with her business community. She needs to get with the touch base with the government, customers, family, friends, and social networks. And just like what you're doing today is an example. Today, you're gonna have an opportunity you already had to get in discussion groups and you're learning from one another. So I'm saying do that also from a standpoint of accounting and finance. Ask questions about some of the things we'll be talking about in this presentation and get how other companies are handling their accounting and financial situation. So she can take, Brenda can take advantage of using these. Some other examples would be find out what government and community special COVID monetary support is available. You may think hopefully there's some support out there, but you don't know, you may need to ask more questions, make sure you're getting what the person next to you is getting. So don't be afraid to ask, make sure you inquire. Or you could be inquiring with this group of people to get understanding on the paperwork and the processes needed to obtain financial or government support, because sometimes that can be tricky. So just finding that type of information, like how did you do that? Or where did you go to get this information? How do you fill out this form? And also thinking in terms of your family and friends. You may have, I know some of you have really small businesses, some a little larger businesses, but there may be a crunch. You may be incurring a lot of expenses right now. Maybe you can ask your family and friends to help reduce expenses. They can help you do advertising, like the advertising we just talked about earlier. Or maybe you need, because the emphasis now is on cleaning, keeping things clean in your environment. You may solicit your family or friends, hey, you have some time, can you help with the extra cleaning I have to do for my services? So once again, just thinking creative and getting everybody involved. And then the other group, your customers. I'm sure you all have loyal customers that you've developed, and they'll want to support you also. So get with them to get ideas from them to be creative and helpful, because they may be running their own businesses as well. And so they may also know how to handle financial and accounting in a crisis situation. And then I just wanted to add, and like I said, some things will get into operations and marketing but then it should, because accounting is basically keeping track of the things you do operationally and from a marketing standpoint. So there'll be a little bit of overlap. But I wanted to say it can help to promote that you're locally owned to help increase your revenues in the community. I know just personally in the community I live in, I got a lot of information on products that I needed that I couldn't get a hold of just through social media. They said, oh, go here or go there and you can find different things. So I think you have a wealth of opportunity to get information, and you just have to seek those out, just like what we're doing now. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, now Brenda's, the next slide deals with management communication. Brenda doesn't feel comfortable making all the decisions on the accounting and financial aspects of her company. So whom should she include in this decision-making process? Next slide, please. So when I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, okay, Brenda's going out, she's gathering all this information, but what does she do? Maybe she's uncomfortable, she doesn't have the expertise to wear all the different hats in her company, and she shouldn't. And once again, I know the sizes of your company vary, so you'll have to adjust this accordingly. But what I was proposing is, as you see on this diagram, that she should have frequent meetings with her management team and her accountant. And then let me talk a little bit more about the accountant, because that's what I know about. I'm a CPA, and I know in your business, you as the owner may be the accountant, you may have a bookkeeper, you may have an accountant you employ, or you may outsource your accounting. And so some of the things I want you to do will require some accounting, and you may be really swamped now trying to wear so many different hats if you are. So you may have to think about getting some financial help. And once again, back to the first scenario, maybe somebody can help you from that group of people that I asked you to look into. But you can look at your, let me check one thing here real quick. Okay, you can look for the bookkeeper can do so much information, but the accountants can have a little bit more knowledge to kind of explain certain things to you. Like in a few minutes, we'll be talking about cash flow, and they may have a little better understanding of that. And then with your outsourced accountant, I know you're gonna have to monitor the fees because you're watching your expenses, so you can't really afford to have them come in all the time. But once again, free advice is always very helpful. But primarily, you want current and accurate financial information of the status of your operation daily. That's going to be the key in a crisis, is having current and accurate financial information about the status of your operations. And then also, I mentioned your banker, your financial analyst, your lawyer, your tax accountant. You may not have all those individuals involved right now. You may need to just get a little support in those areas depending on where you are in your company, especially if you're planning on borrowing money or getting a credit line or things of that nature that we'll talk about later. But just you'll want to get those involved though. And that's why I separated them, because in my mind, I'm thinking you want to make sure within your management team and with your accountant that you're all in sync and know where you're going and what you need to do. And then you have that cash flow information that I'm getting ready to talk about, because that's what you'll need to present to a banker or analyst that if you're seeking that type of support. You'll need to have some information to show you really know what your company, you know what's going on with your cash in your company, you really understand your expenses. So you'll want to have that information ready. But I propose that, in a crisis situation, you may end up finding yourself meeting daily, and you may already are, but you may find yourself meeting daily with these individuals, even though you may have a lot of things on your plate. You will want to, definitely stay in contact. We can go on to the next slide. So scenario 3, Brenda is ready to implement some accounting and financial processes, because now she's talked with her management team, she's gotten with external consultants that she needed. So she's ready to get going, but she needs a better grasp of her company's financial and operational position. What is the first thing she should consider implementing? So once again, let me just mention, since you'll be getting in groups later, be thinking about this and think about when this COVID situation first started, what did you first think about implementing? So just kind of be thinking about it as we go through and think back to your steps, because as we go through, we don't know. We may go through cycles of this virus, and so you'll need to know, what did you do initially, what worked, what didn't work, and you'll want to keep basically like maybe a log, a diary of kind of what worked, what didn't work, what did you encounter, because this may go in cycles and you'll want to be ready. You may be using new accounts that you haven't used before. Next page. So I mentioned earlier about cash flow. So don't worry, this is the only schedule that I have that I actually prepared, and we're not going to go through it item by item. But I do want you to understand what it is, because everything that I was looking at said that for management in a crisis situation, you really need to understand your cash flow. And so a lot of times we think of cash flow in terms of doing it on a monthly basis. But in a crisis situation, in a situation where you really need to know daily, they suggest a rolling 13-week cash flow. So rolling meaning you pick up a week each week. So we schedule out for 13 weeks, and at the end of that first week, you schedule out another week and another week. Okay, and then hopefully as you keep doing it, you'll get more accurate in developing that cash flow. And then also, I want to say, don't stress if your cash flow isn't accurate. It's a guide, so I don't want you to stress or panic or think you're a poor decision maker. This is all just something to help you be better and to learn from it, so not to stress over it. So this is where your accountant could play the biggest role, is helping you get this cash flow statement done timely and accurately. And then they can work with the different individuals and fitting in the pieces of the puzzle to get this document done, because they'll have to gather a lot of information, and so they'll have to get cash balances, cash receipts, payroll information, taxes, and all that information is in the ledger, so it's there. So think of this as your checking account, and where you keep track of all the ins and outs of your cash in your checking account. That's what this is doing, but it's doing it by category and by time frame, so you can understand it better. So one of the other things that needs to be done is that with this cash flow, you'll want to know, it'll help identify what items really deplete cash the fastest. And so that you can focus your attention on the right things, because you'll have a limited amount of time. Things are going to be going fast paced. So this will help you identify where's your cash going out the door the fastest, so you can target that. Other things besides the 13-week cash flow, and then I did mention on the side here, I say one, it captures bank account activity in one location so you can easily review. So you can imagine you're not having to go to each statement or each reconciliation you've done. You can look at a spreadsheet and see everything in one place. And then when you still forecast, because you'll still need to forecast like you had and do your budgets like you've been doing, this will help you with that budgeting process. And then once again, it's available for the banks and other lenders to review. Whenever you need to seek cash, you'll have this document available that'll show them that you have a grasp of your financial situation. And then ultimately, it just aids in making wise decisions on what things you need to purchase and sell and how you should value those items. And then another thing that you might consider doing also is when we talk about budgeting, instead of doing, the typical budgeting, normally when I meet with y'all each year, we talk about flexible budgeting. So I'll just briefly mention that another type of report you could use is flexible budgeting, which means you identify those expenses that are fixed, that stay the same month to month to month. And they may slightly vary a little bit, but for the most part, they stay the same. And then you will want to identify those expenses that vary. They'll change each month, and they'll vary based on something. It'll be related to something, how much you sell or whatever. The majority of the time it's based on your sales volume, and they vary. And then you'll want to do what we call a flexible budget, so that you key in on those items, because the more you sell, the more those expenses go up. The less you sell, they'll go down. And then of course, what hurts is if you have a lot of fixed expenses and your sell volume goes down, you have to offset all those fixed expenses. So hopefully you're not in that particular situation, but it's good to know what situation you're in. And then before we leave this discussion, I just want to mention another suggestion would be implement tighter cash management strategies. And those can vary, but what I mean is you just definitely want some control over your cash. So it could be, if you don't already have this in place, it could be a little challenging, but like for instance, if you had electronic billing it would speed up collections because you would get the bills out faster and you could collect. I don't know if you weren't already doing that or if you're not of the size that would be beneficial, but think along those lines. Regularly follow up on any past due accounts that you may have for people that aren't paying you. It may be hard to get them to pay now, but still you need to say, hey, I'm still out here. What's the status? Do I need to work with you? What can we do to get that account current? We'll talk more in detail later, but negotiate better terms with your vendors. So basically you're negotiating with your vendors, the people you owe, and then you're gonna have to negotiate with the people that owe you, and you hope it all comes into sync. But obviously the goal is you want cash coming in faster and going out slower in your company. So when preparing the rolling 13-week cash flow forecast, think of a range of possible outcomes. Just keep yourself wide open. It's not going to look the same. Don't be concerned if it looks different from week to week. But in order to do this, you need reasonable, supportable information about past events, current conditions, and future economic forecasts to do this cash flow, to be able to forecast. Like I said, you need accurate information on the past, a good understanding of what's currently going on in your business, and an understanding of what's going on in the future. So you're not just going through the process of doing the paperwork and dropping in numbers. You're actually getting something meaningful. And then when you sit down with the management team each week, each day, however often is needed, you'll have this in front of you each time, and we'll walk through this and discuss it. And if it's just yourself, then you do that as well. But try to get others involved for more creative ideas. So knowing all this information will aid in making sure your business will have enough cash for essential items like paying payroll, making vendor payments, and tax payments. But once again, you may run into shortfalls, but don't get discouraged because you're now more knowledgeable of what's going on in your company, and that's a good thing. We can go on to the next slide. Okay, the next scenario, Brenda understands where she needs to be from a cash standpoint, because remember we just talked about the cash flow forecast, but she also wants to know how to get to the cash level she expects in her forecast. Say she keeps doing this cash flow, but it's never coming out in favorable. What she needs to actually take some action steps. So I want you to be thinking about that as you think through this process. What changes have you made or plan to make in the next month, 3 months to the year? Be thinking about things you can do to improve your cash flow. But I'm going to give you some ideas of what you may consider, and you'll want to, you can go on to the next slide. I just highlighted them here, so you may want to take some notes. I just kind of went through and do some research on some ideas under each of these categories. Some of them may not all fit within what you're experiencing, but feel free to just jot down some notes. I'll try to talk a little slower so that maybe you can jot these down. If you have any more questions about them later, just let me know. But like I said, she's trying to make that cash flow in her favor. So how does she bring it to a favorable position where more cash is coming in than out? And so I want to look at inventory, accounts receivable, some other asset issues, and revenue is some of the items I want to discuss now, and then kind of break those apart. So one of the things you want to think about is plan for disruptions. When you're doing the cash flow plan that there will be disruptions in what you produce. And we know that'll negatively impact your liquidity. And when I say the word liquidity, that's your cash flow. So Brenda should be thinking of the following things. Confirm that suppliers that provide essential items will remain reliable. Okay, so you want to make sure you're producing a product, you need supplies, make sure those supplies you're going to get in a timely manner like you were getting, hopefully that you were getting, because if something happens there and there's disruption there, it'll keep you, of course, from doing what you need to do. So don't assume that those things are flowing smoothly. Go ahead and get with your suppliers and make sure everything's in sync. But still go ahead and plan for disruption. So even though they assure you and you're vast and things are going smoothly, just have a what if things don't work out as the way you planned, the way you discussed. Also mentioned seek out additional sources or alternate products and raw materials as a backup plan. Like I said, I know a lot of these things are operational things that you do, but they impact your financial statements. So you want to be prepared. So in your disruption plan, be looking at alternative sources of resources for your raw materials should something happen that you won't get them anymore, so that you can keep running smoothly from day to day. And then I mentioned on their valuation issues. It may not be the height of your concern right now, but it's still a concern because you'll have to prepare financial statements at some point, and you'll have to value those items on your financial statement. And the bankers or whoever may want to see those financial statements, and you still want to show net income. So we don't want to just totally focus on cash flow. So just know that your accountant, bookkeeper, contracted accountant, whoever, will have to make sure if there's any type of disruption in your inventory that it's still valued correctly. If the market you do business in disappears or is greatly reduced, as it would be expected maybe in a pandemic, the value of your inventory may drop significantly, or at least temporarily. So you need to know that if your business levels fall dramatically, fixed overhead costs will contribute more to the cost of the item you're producing. So why does that matter? It matters because it's fixed cost. And remember, if you don't have enough volume, but you add more fixed cost, your net income goes down, okay? So these factors must be considered when valuing your inventory for reporting purposes. So we want to think in terms of that as well. The next item is accounts receivable, getting back to the people that owe you money, okay? So I have on there timely invoicing. And I say that because if you don't timely invoice them, you won't timely, of course, collect your cash. So we don't want to get behind in that. If you have a situation where you're more than a one-man shop and you have like 20, you have to have a person that handles accounts, and then you never know who in your organization may become ill. You do need to make sure you have somebody that can jump in and say, for instance, handle the billing because you need that money coming in. So you want to make sure you have that covered to reduce collection concerns by making sure you get those invoices out. Make sure, and we talked about this a little earlier, know your customer and their payment history and how reliable they are. So you've got some existing amounts out there that people probably already owe you. And so hopefully you're not challenged with collecting those. But it is a good time right now that you know about them. Like, think about what industry they're in, especially if they're a substantial client that contributes, if they contribute a lot to that percentage of your accounts receivable. You need to think about what industry they're in. Maybe your industry isn't impacted as heavily, but if theirs is, then you know that you may have a problem collecting those monies. So you may want to consider getting into an agreement with them or working something out so you can still do business together, but you do need to figure out a plan to collect on those receivables. Now, one option like I have on there is incentives. I mean, obviously, typically in a normal situation, if they owe you $100, you want to get $100. But in this case, if you've got bills to pay, you may try to incentivize them. You may take off a little bit here, or you may say, neither one of us is in a situation, we both need our cash, maybe negotiate something for the future when things get better, y'all can work out some arrangements. But for now, you need to collect on your receivables. So that's something that'll be a key item on your cash flow forecast. So we want to get, like I said, emphasize you definitely want that cash coming in. And then just your other assets, whatever they may be. And like I said, it's not as big an issue since it's not cash flow per se, but there may be a financial impairment of those assets as well due to the pandemic. So examine any change in a way an asset has been used in your company, especially if you have decided that you have been creative and you've gone a different avenue of revenue generation, you may not be using some of your assets, but hopefully, you don't want to make quick decisions and get rid of an asset, because you may turn around and go back to what you were doing, or you may continue to do what's working now and what was working in the past. But you do need to see and not let assets sit idle. If you really just don't need them, maybe you can sell them, or you can need to think in terms of discarding items, especially if you're in the food business and you don't have the volume, then you've got spoilage. So you have to deal with that. And obviously anything you do with that inventory physically, you have to adjust it on your financial statements. So all above values, all the things that I discussed affect your balance sheet. Okay. And so now I want to move on to the revenue side. And on there, you see where I say flexibility. And this, once again, is an operational concept. Whatever you decide to do operationally with your business, your record keeping has to follow along those lines. So if you're delaying, and I've read through a few things, I thought, oh, those are good ideas, and maybe they may be good ideas for you. I read where, maybe you had something you were gonna wait, you had this product idea, this product change, and you were gonna wait and save it for the holidays, whether it be Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever the holiday may be for you. You may consider rolling it out early to increase your revenues, and put something new out there that'll entice people to buy your product. Also, you can evaluate, can your company shift production to products more in need? And I think we talked about that earlier, where people have been creative and they've been dining in restaurants and now they're takeout. And so your revenue generation will look a little differently. And so you'll need to identify that. And I want to also mention again that if your revenue flow is differently, I think it's good to track maybe in a separate accounting record how you're doing. Keep track of that separately so your management team can get back together and say, this really worked and we need to continue this. And you have the numbers to show. If you can show the revenue and the related expenses that went with that new idea or that change in processes, that can help you make decisions as well. So record keeping is very helpful in making decisions. And we can go on to the next slide. All right, and then I switch gears. Before I was thinking in terms of assets and revenue. Now I want to look at the other side, your payables, your expenses, and then a little bit of discussion on loans. I won't go heavily into that area, but payables, expenses, and loans. So scenario 5 is Brenda sees improvement in incoming cash flow, but still cash is flowing out of the business faster than it is coming in. What additional steps can she perform making use of her cash flow statements, her financial records, and her financial statements? So once again, turn that around as I'm talking about this and be thinking about what changes have you made or plan to make in your business to reduce costs or improve revenue over the next 3 months or a year or even sooner than that. So be thinking in terms of that. But I'm going to just mention, once again, just kind of a laundry list of things that you could possibly be focusing on, because also, once again, you're going to be wearing a lot of hats, and it would help you to have certain things you can focus on instead of jumping from here to here to here to here. You would pick certain key items each day, each week to focus on and do the best that you can there. So let's start with payables. Look realistically at any possible delays in your payables. Inquire in your area if it's possible to delay paying some of your bills if you need to. I mean, if you can keep on track, great, but if you need to, for instance, utility payments, see if they're working with companies and that it's okay to delay without a penalty, or if there's a penalty, how much is the penalty, to see if it's worth it. But at least if you don't need it right now, at least find out through that circle of friends and business community, government, find out what's out there, what's available to you to help you. Make mutually agreed upon arrangements with one or more of your suppliers to change the way you pay them if needed. they're going to want to get paid just like you want to get payment on your receivables. So they're going to be willing to work with you. What would be great is the timing of how your customers pay you is in sync with when you need to pay your vendors. But there's just going to be a lot of, give and take. And so just, a lot of communication just has to be involved there. And then from payables, we'll jump down to expenses. So I'm sorry, let's go on to the next slide. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So we already talked about payments, payables, and payment flexibility. So expenses, travel. Of course, right now, as you can see, now we've saved on travel because we're all in our own locations. We didn't have to go too far. So also, avoid non-essential company travel, training, meetings, entertainment costs that involve extra money. But if it's training, like we talked about earlier, where you can get training online and things like that, then that's beneficial. So as far as your business expenses, look through all your expenses and see what can be reduced substantially. And then payroll is a big issue. If you, depending on how many employees you have, you definitely want to be thinking through this because you want to maintain your employees, and that they would be struggling without a job. So I know this is a balancing act. So just make sure you understand your payroll and how it's working. Consider all your options. Consider encouraging employees to take paid leave, encouraging voluntary unpaid leave, because maybe they need the time home with their family, but they do want to come back at a certain point in time. Just see what you can do to keep your staff afloat as well as your business. Because what happens is you could also negotiate like reduced hours, wherever the case, because what happens is when things turn around, you're going to want these people. So you don't want to lose them, but probably in most cases, payroll expense is your next most highest expense outside of your product cost. So you do have to look at your payroll and be creative. I know, for example, my sister works in an industry where they provide food to hospitals and restaurants. Well, of course, from the restaurant standpoint, the volume went down. So she was furloughed. I've been talking too much. And so, so that was temporary. So she had that time off. They extended it a week. So I think she may have been out a month. So now she's back at work. Well, it actually had a way of turning out because while she was gone, her manager was working, then he ended up getting sick with the virus. So then by the time she came back in, she was able to fill in the gap, but she was rested because, she had that time. So now she's able to juggle everything, rested, having had that month off and can handle things. And he's not here because he's still ill, and she's able to fill in and handle everything. So it worked out great. The next thing I want to talk about is supplies. Once again, we're still working with the vendors to see, if they can offer any discounts, extended time with no penalty. All of this we're trying to do just to reduce our expenses and to make that cash flow forecast work for you. So look at your creditors and look at your creditor situation. If you can negotiate better interest rates, spread out payments, freeze payments. However, understand there may be long-term costs to that. So whatever decision you make, you do have to realize if there's increased costs on the back end, factor that in. It may be something you don't have a choice to make, but be aware of it, and you would have to factor that into your budget. And I know some of you are all new businesses, so I know you're already very well acquainted with your revenues and expenses because you just started out and you went through this process of training, so you're very familiar with them. So that's very helpful. And then, like I mentioned with the revenue, go ahead with your expenses and kind of flag the items that are specifically pandemic related so that you'll know, whether it be extra cleaning supplies or whatever the case may be. So you'll know to remove those from your budget when things get better, just so you can have a more accurate budget. And then if some of you were planning for expansion, for example, adding on to the facility, adding more computers, switch, whatever the case may be, of course, you know, you would have to consider putting that on hold temporarily, unless you're in that business that's really booming right now, and some businesses are, then of course you can, you know, continue on with your plans. And then something interesting I was reading about that I thought I would share, and it had to do with competitors. It said your company might be in a better shape than others. So if a competitor is considering closing up shop completely, you may consider acquiring or buying their inventory to use in your location at a lower price. So I just thought it was something, you know, interesting to see. So I wanted to mention, but all of it's just, you know, thinking creatively, basically. So the next topic we'll be talking about, like we see up here, is loans. I have on there negotiations and lines of credit. So there, I just want to mention, be careful of quick fixes, like getting more loans and incurring higher expenses as related to interest expense. So make sure that would be the opportunity to use your cash flow statements, your forecast, wherever, to work with your accountant, your financial analyst, if you have one, or that family friend that's a financial analyst, or the banker, and see if a loan is in your best situation, or if a line of credit is needed. But you do want to make sure that if something were to happen, even if you don't need it now, you do need to know what options are available to you to get financing down the road. So that is the benefit of a line of credit, to know that if you were to need it, it is there for you. Or if you already have one, you may need to restructure it to meet your current needs now. Remember, you've done that 13-week cash flow forecast, so you can use that forecast to readjust how you may want to use that line of credit. Just be looking for, also from the private sector, just see if there's any no interest, low interest loans or grants. Just see what's out there that's specifically, there may be special programs that are out there just specifically for your industry, to help your industry, to help you reduce your expenses. So also, it's all about increasing your revenues, increasing your cash flow, and then reducing your expenses. Let's see, we'll go on to the next slide. And then before I wrap up here, and I just wanted to mention some additional things. If you're in a setting where you have your accountant that you're paying has additional time on their hands, just make sure you're caught up on reconciling your bank accounts, doing any inventory and fixed asset audits, you know, making sure everything's there. So if there's downtime, you're still having to incur the expense, you may as well use that time to also make sure your internal controls, you know, I can't leave an accounting topic without talking about internal controls that I usually talk about each year. Because one thing that may happen if you're in a little bit larger size business and you're losing some of your employees, or some of your employees become ill, you may have that issue of segregation of duties. So there's always that control issue of, if you've got somebody handling cash, somebody else is paying the bills, there's certain things you don't want to mix together. So we don't want to lose sight of the internal controls we had in place to make sure that our cash stays within the company. So just keep that in mind, your internal controls you've built for your business, to make sure you know what's going on in your checking account, that's still happening, even if you may have lost an employee, that those things are covered. So just wrapping up, the goals of forecasting with your 13-week cash flow forecast are to understand the sources, uses, and timing of your cash flow into the future, and to take action to manage and improve your cash position in your business. So analyze your cash flow and make it informative for you. You'll discover what customers, by using this cash flow that I suggested, you'll discover what customers are active and are driving your positive cash flow, and which customers are driving your cash flow negative. You'll see different patterns in your business that can be informative to you, that'll help you during a crisis situation. And then I already mentioned to share your forecast with the bank as needed if you need to extend your cash flow. So just what's next? At some point, anticipate that people will resume their normal purchasing of your products. They'll go back to planning vacations and dining out and home renovations and shopping. So what's next is you still have to be ready. You don't know when that'll happen, but you want to be ready with your products and services when that time comes. So there's just a lot to think about, I know, but you want your financial position, your employee base, your inventory ready for when that time happens as well. So that's really what I had to provide for you. And now let's go to the next slide. In your small group discussions, I want you to really, we were talking about Brenda and how she was going through the process of finding out what's available, what resources available to her to understand her business better, to talking about the cash flow and the expenses and everything. I want you to go ahead and do the discussion questions related to that. So go to the next slide. I've got 2 here. I've got a total of 4 scenarios because that's what we went through. So when you're in your small groups, depending on how time permits, you can discuss all 4 or you can pick 2. There may be 2 that are really, somebody in your group really wants to discuss. So remember, the first one is, how did you become aware of ideas or opportunities to help prepare your company to operate efficiently during a pandemic? From contacts with, in your community, peers, and industry and family. So discuss your pitfalls and successes in getting that information, because that could be helpful to somebody else. And then scenario 2, whom do you rely on, internal, external, to your business to provide financial advice about your business? What's worked for you, especially if you're trying to handle everything for yourself and somebody else can give you a suggestion on taking a little bit off your plate. What would they suggest? What piece, and go on to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. What piece of financial information about your company has been the most helpful so far? I mentioned the cash flow, but what's been most helpful to you in understanding the financial position of your company? And if needed, if you needed additional information, what do you feel like you're lacking? Like, discuss with you, what type of information do you feel you're lacking at this point? And then scenario 4, what changes have you made or plan to make in your business to reduce cost or improve revenue over the next 3 months, 6 months, year? Just what plans do you have there? So at this point, I will let you, I just would like to break into the small groups. Oh, can you share some of those with us, please? Any specifics?
Yeah, I told them that schools are, because I ran a private school, the schools are completely down here in Afghanistan because we are forced by the government. And although we tried to have many other alternative solutions to open the schools and have the classes with few students each day, we were not able to open because we were forced by government. So our solution was to make CDs of lessons for students and give them. And one other friend suggested me to make educational packages, worksheets, and just send them to the students. And she told me that it will be a good solution too. And I'm going to try it because as we tried the CDs, only 20% of the students decided to come and take the CDs, and the others didn't because they don't have access to technology. They don't have TV, they don't have CD player. That was the problem. And right now I think we're going to, it's good to try the worksheets and educational packages through papers.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share?
Things we discussed about were some of the disadvantages were the losses that were incurred because it's a new process. So some transactions went to other accounts, and some unplanned expenses as well. There was delay of deliveries because there were a few companies that were allowed to operate during the pandemic. The sales were also low because it's a new concept. We have a few online platforms, and this was a new concept for our customers. So for them to understand that this is going to work took a lot of work and effort. One of the ways we used to advertise was through social media, and the advantages discussed were we made sales without paying rent. Also, we discovered other selling channels. Like we were forced to sell online and to use WhatsApp and to use Facebook, and also create websites. Like some of us were in the process of creating websites, but were taking for long, and with the pandemic, the process was rushed. Also, because of the social media exposure, it increased our customer bases. Like more customer aware about your products because now you're focusing online, and currently more people are on social media, and people had the time to sit and look at their social media pages. So it gave us a whole other group of customers for our businesses. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.